The night of February 1st, 1959, did not begin as a mystery, nor did it feel like the prelude to disaster. It began with order, preparation, and a quiet sense of control earned through experience. 9 hikers, young, disciplined, and highly trained, advanced steadily across the eastern slopes of the northern Ural Mountains, navigating terrain they had studied for months. These were not amateurs chasing thrill or danger. They were students and graduates, engineers and athletes, accustomed to cold, isolation, and calculated risk. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was known for his precision and restraint, a man who recorded details not out of anxiety, but out of respect for the environments he moved through. His notebooks reflected confidence, not bravado. The mountain ahead bore a name given by the indigenous Mansi people that loosely translated to Dead Mountain, yet the group treated it as a cultural footnote rather than a warning. Folklore, they believed, had no authority over preparation and reason. Their journals revealed no dread, no hesitation, no sense that the night ahead would be anything other than difficult but manageable. And yet, before the sun could rise, something would occur that shattered discipline, overturned instinct, and forced all 9 of them to make choices so extreme they continued to resist understanding. When search parties finally reached the campsite weeks later, the scene they encountered immediately contradicted every principle of cold weather survival. The tent stood where it had been erected, not crushed, not swept away, not buried beneath an avalanche. Snow rested lightly against its sides, undisturbed. But the fabric itself told a different story. Long, jagged cuts tore through it from the inside, as though the occupants had been racing against an invisible clock, unwilling or unable to use the entrance just inches away. Inside, boots, heavy coats, food supplies, and essential equipment remained neatly in place, items no trained hiker would abandon willingly in sub-zero darkness. Outside, a trail of footprints led away from the tent, descending toward the forest. Some prints were barefoot. Others showed only socks or a single shoe. What made the trail even more unsettling was its orderliness. No running, no chaotic scattering, no signs of a violent escape. There was no evidence of struggle, no mark suggesting another group, no debris to support an avalanche. It was as if something intangible had entered the tent and convinced 9 rational individuals that staying inside, even briefly, was more dangerous than the lethal cold waiting beyond the fabric walls. The first bodies were discovered near the edge of the forest, beside the remains of a small fire that appeared hastily constructed and then abandoned. 2 hikers lay close together, barefoot and underdressed, their skin darkened by extreme exposure. Their hands were damaged, bearing injuries consistent with climbing trees, broken branches above them suggesting they had scrambled upward, perhaps to gain visibility, perhaps to escape something unseen. Further uphill, between the forest and the campsite, 3 more bodies were found scattered along the slope. Their positions told a quiet story of intent. They appeared to be moving back toward the tent, step by frozen step, as though whatever had driven them away had finally loosened its grip. Yet their injuries complicated this narrative. One suffered a fractured skull. Another displayed internal trauma without corresponding surface wounds. These were not injuries easily explained by collapse or disorientation. They did not resemble the consequences of slipping on snow or tumbling downhill. Instead, they suggested force, focused, deliberate, and strangely controlled. As winter slowly released its hold on the region, the final 4 hikers were uncovered months later in a ravine deeper within the forest, partially buried beneath layers of snow and ice. Their condition was even more disturbing. Several had suffered massive chest fractures, injuries comparable to those seen in severe vehicular collisions, yet their skin showed little external damage. One woman was missing her tongue, another had lost parts of her eyes and facial tissue. Official explanations would later attribute these injuries to natural scavenging and decomposition, but the timing and circumstances left room for doubt. The clothing added another layer of complexity. Some victims wore multiple layers belonging to others, garments exchanged or repurposed with clear intention. This was not blind panic. It suggested awareness, survival reasoning, and time enough to think, to adapt, to help one another. Traces of radiation were found on certain items of clothing, quietly recorded and then largely ignored. When the investigation concluded, the cause of death was attributed to an unknown compelling force, a phrase so deliberately vague it felt less like a conclusion and more like a surrender. It is here, as the evidence grows heavier and the explanations thinner, that the story demands attention rather than resolution. If you find yourself drawn into these unanswered questions, into cases where certainty dissolves instead of solidifies, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like, not as a routine gesture, but as a way of ensuring that these stories remain examined rather than forgotten. The Dyatlov Pass Incident is not merely a historical anomaly. It is a reminder of how quickly confidence can erode when reality refuses to cooperate with explanation. Over the decades, theories have emerged with confidence and collapsed under scrutiny. Avalanches were proposed, despite the absence of debris and the tent remaining upright. Military experiments were suggested, fueled by reports of strange glowing orbs seen in the sky by others in the region, though no documents were ever released to confirm such activity. Infrasound theories claimed the wind itself may have induced panic, yet they failed to account for the precise injuries and calm footprint patterns. Animal attacks, criminal involvement, and internal conflict were all investigated and dismissed. Each theory explains fragments of the event, but never its entirety. The case resists resolution because it does not behave like a singular catastrophe. It feels layered, sequential, as if multiple forces, natural or otherwise, intersected briefly and then vanished, leaving confusion in their wake. What allows the Dyatlov Pass incident to endure is not excess, but restraint. There are no eyewitness accounts describing terror, no frantic final messages, no dramatic confessions written in desperation. Instead, there is silence. Silence in the journals that end without warning. Silence in photographs that stop mid-roll. Silence in official files that close without clarity. These hikers were capable, cautious, and bonded by trust. Whatever confronted them did not need to pursue them or reveal itself. It required no spectacle. It simply had to convince them, completely and simultaneously, that the tent was no longer a place of safety. Even now, decades removed from that frozen slope, the mountain offers no answers. The wind still moves across its surface as it did that night. The terrain remains unchanged. The records remain closed. Perhaps the most unsettling possibility is not that something extraordinary happened, but that it happened in a way so unfamiliar that our existing frameworks cannot describe it. If 9 prepared, intelligent individuals could be undone so thoroughly, so quietly, and without leaving behind a clear cause, what does that suggest about the limits of human understanding when nature, or something beyond it, chooses not to explain itself? Beyond the physical evidence and fractured theories, there is another layer that often goes unnoticed: the psychological moment when decision turns into inevitability. These hikers did not simply react. They chose, collectively and almost simultaneously, to leave the tent. That alone suggests a shared perception of threat, something sensed rather than seen, understood rather than identified. Panic alone rarely produces coordination. Yet the footprints show alignment, not chaos. Clothing was removed and redistributed with intention. Fires were built. Paths were retraced. These were not the actions of people who had lost their minds, but of people operating under a new, unspoken assumption that the mountain itself had become hostile. Whatever triggered that shift did not linger long enough to be documented, but it lingered long enough to alter behavior, override training, and fracture trust in their only shelter. And if that moment can occur without leaving a trace, without sound, without force, without a clear cause, then it suggests a type of danger that does not announce itself, one that only reveals its presence through the irreversible choices it leaves behind. Decades have passed since that night, yet the mountain remains unchanged, indifferent to the questions it inspired. The slope where the tent once stood is still exposed to the same winds, the same cold, the same silence that surrounded the hikers in their final hours. Archives have been reviewed, reopened, and quietly closed again. Reports have been amended, theories refined, language softened. But no new certainty has emerged. What remains is not evidence, but absence. The absence of a trigger, of a sound, of a visible threat capable of overriding instinct and discipline at once. The Dyatlov Pass incident endures not because it defies explanation, but because it exposes how fragile explanation itself can be when confronted with events that leave no clear signature. Perhaps the most unsettling element is not what the hikers encountered, but what they trusted in that moment. They trusted their judgment enough to flee the tent, yet trusted the mountain enough to believe they could survive without it. Somewhere between those two assumptions, the margin for survival vanished. There was no single mistake, no obvious turning point that can be isolated and corrected in hindsight. Instead, there was a narrow window in which 9 rational minds accepted a shared conclusion, one we cannot reconstruct because we were never meant to witness it. And if that decision was shaped by something subtle, something environmental or psychological that left no trace, then it suggests that danger does not always arrive with warning signs we are trained to recognize. Today, the names of the hikers are preserved in records and memorials, their final route traced and retraced by others who return seeking answers. Yet each expedition leaves with the same uncertainty they arrived with. The mountain offers no clarification, no confession, no resolution. It stands as it always has, quietly asserting that not all events are meant to be understood, and that some truths exist only in the choices they force us to make. If 9 prepared, capable people could be compelled to abandon their only shelter on a frozen slope, not by chaos, but by conviction, then the question that remains is not what happened on that mountain, but how often similar moments pass unnoticed, waiting for us to trust our instincts just once and be wrong.